All right, and we are back for part two. Um, we're gonna keep doing some Truby. Just had some breakfast and or lunch or whatever, and we're gonna move on to chapter two. We're gonna start working on the fun stuff now that we at least sort of established like the premise of like the basic uh, what's the story. So now we're gonna come in here and we're gonna find the thread. All right, here we go. And I really recommend you buying the book. I've only been showing like the exercises, but his explanations of everything are actually really spot on. There's also some interviews with him that you can watch um, that are interesting. He has definitely some strong opinions about everything he's saying. Um, and I think that it's definitely worth sort of exploring, watching him speak about it in comparison to him writing about it. His voice kind of is interesting how it comes through here, um, in the way he writes. So these are the 7 key steps of story structure. So basically, every story he says has these 7 things. There are other things that he sort of goes into later. Ultimately, I think there's 22 or something, and that's sort of, I think he uses Star Wars for that, or The Godfather or something for that example. We're not going to be able to have 22 because it's not a feature and it's also not a standard hero's journey. But the next thing that I work on, and the main thing that this channel is going to be a lot more, a lot of types of writing. There's going to be like short stories. I'm working on like I want to start a novel and a novella, and then I have like some poetry that I want to do, as well as like, I have some opinions on how like other people conduct themselves about the creative process, and we'll be able to sort of get into a lot of that stuff. I had other stuff lined up, and then I was lucky enough to sort of have this opportunity to adapt this. So that's what this is going to be first. But the 7 key steps. So we have weakness and need, desire, opponent, plan, battle, self-revelation, equilibrium. So the weakness and need is sort of what the characters have in the beginning. Luckily, we sort of established kind of what that was in the last video, but we need to sort of explain it more. So with Paula, who's going to be our main protagonist, and then Dawn, who's going to be our other protagonist. They both have they ironically are going to have the same weaknesses and needs, but their characters are going to be different enough that we're going to see them sort of manifest in different ways. So they both need validation, um, and their weakness is basically going to be their insecurities. Uh, so that's sort of what a lot of it's going to be about. And their desire is the inheritance, not just because of the money, but because of what that means to them. It means that, there's this sort of old idea of like the firstborn gets the most of everything, and we don't really do that as much around here, but like there's definitely this kind of who is the heir, who is the person who belongs, who's the favorite, who's this, that, and the other, and parents, either foster or crush those sort of ideas. But inheritance also to them is going to be multiple different things, not just their father's money, but that is a part of it. Opponent, each other. So this isn't going to be just a big argument. That's what the play was. There were other scenes and stuff, but the big thing was them sort of trying to like explain to each other why the other one shouldn't have the money, and ultimately stuff like that doesn't really matter in real life, but the conversations do happen, and they're important to reveal character, and that's sort of what the story is. Is for every scene furthers a plot and reveals character. So there's gonna be some other things that I want to do in this adaptation that are gonna be different than in the play. Uh, Other characters are gonna be you're gonna see other people. Like in the previous video, I talked sort of about how there's only two people. I think it's gonna be more like four or five in this one. But yeah, we'll go from there. So their opponents are each other, and then the plan, or at least Paula's plan, is to convince Dawn to go away. She's been away for 10 years. She come back now for the money. Get the fuck out of here. And the battle is actually going to probably end up being that, which is going to be an actual fight to the death. And then the self-revelation here is they are not each other's enemy. And then their new equilibrium is going to be friendship and forgiveness. They're going to find out like who the real enemy is, and that the real enemy is not actually going to be each other. Okay, so those are sort of the 7 key steps. And that's really kind of it. Like that, this chapter is like extremely important because you sort of need to know what these are, because you know you'd be surprised. Like in the original draft of this, like not the one that ended up being the play, I kind of didn't have. I had these, but I didn't have like a clear understanding of what they were. And if you don't, you're going to sort of end up in this position where people are just going to be, there's not going to be any real conflict. There's going to be arguing, but it's just going to be page filling. It's not going to be like anything that's moving the plot forward or really revealing anything about the characters after 3 pages. So I think that, you know, it's important to sort of have these out. We're going to go through some of the exercises and see if there's anything else we want to do to develop this. And if not, you know, we're just going to move on. So there we go. Okay. So we're going to also write down some story events describing each in a single sentence. So this is going to be sort of where we start laying the groundwork of what's going to be the plot. So again, you know, writing is so much easier if you know it. Okay, so story events. We're going to have the photo. This is also going to go into later. He has this thing called the symbol lab, which we're going to go into. But the photo, the X, the paint. Oh, it's actually a painting, not a photo. The chair. The will. Part 1, 2, and 3. And then the basement. These are all also scenes in my head, so I'm going to sort of expand on these in a second, but I want to kind of get them out. The competition. And the intrusion / call to action, which is going to be the voicemail. And then those are 2 separate scenes. Those can be separate. And these are also not in the right order. I'm going to have to reorder them. The fight. Memories 1, 2, and 3. So finding it, solving it, the answer. the twist. So this is a part that I'm actually not so sure about, because one of the things I want to sort of do is have it be like Paula and had it's like the legitimate family, and then the father had an affair um, with Dawn's mother, who died, and then he brought Dawn home. But what I want to find out later is that Paula's mother also had an affair, potentially, and so Paula's actually not his daughter at all. So that's where like the love was. So I'm gonna see if that works. It may not, but we'll see. And this is sort of, doing a sort of satire on, like a black satire on, like this whole type of Gothic, American Gothic style of storytelling. Like with the whole Wuthering Heights going after the inheritance and everything. So yeah, we have some story events here, and let's take a look. So yeah, this is what they are, and I'll sort of explain them as they become relevant. Yeah, they're embedded in the story itself. So how I want to do this is there's the intrusion first, because Paula shows up. No, Dawn shows up after 10 years. Then there's going to be a call to action. But between that the basement. So she shows up, and Paula's like, okay, doesn't want her to stay at all. Then they get the voicemail from the lawyer about the will, and then she says, Dawn, you can stay. We'll look for everything. We'll look for the will in the morning because it's somewhere in the house, and you just stay in your old room. Now Dawn doesn't want to stay in her old room, and we find out why later. So she ends up staying in the living room. However, Paula comes back to do some work because she's working, and finds her there, and it's like, oh, you're trying to find the will before me, which is what begins this whole process of not being able to trust each other. They do find it. And there's 3 parts to it. And that's sort of where I'm stuck. Because they find the will in his old chair. And this is going to sort of be, there's the chair, and then there's going to be the note in the chair. And the note in the chair it's going to be like, yeah, okay, I remember now. All right. Finding it in his old chair, because he told them never to get rid of it. Then they find, which is a clue. Okay, so they find the note in the chair and have to translate it to find the DVD with the riddle. Um, so so I remember writing. Okay, and so the riddle, I remember the riddle. But in between, while that's happening, with a video from their father on it. So there was a scene in here where they have memory one, while waiting for the DVD to scan. I might have to cut like what ended up being like the climax in the play. That's why I'm so confused. So Memories one is probably the X. Okay. So after you remember that he solved the riddle. See, this is what's weird, is I'm having to reorient. So they do the answer to the riddle. The person who gets it right gets all the money. We find out who that is. We find out that Paul is not the daughter. That's not ultimately who does or doesn't get the money, though. And so then they fight over the answer and look and find a way to see both answers. Answers from the mother. Paula is shocked and realizes the abuse now that she is older. The abuse is from both parents in different ways. Both parents played games using children. They decide to make something together as a painting of a building. One is an architect, the other a painter. On these in the morning, was it a dream? Dawn. So that's what happened in the old play. I don't know if that's gonna work here because, like, yeah, just because I don't know if that's gonna work this time. Again, writing's easier if you know how to type. See, I set up this thing in the play where she was dreaming in the beginning, and they sort of become friends in the dream. They talk about their dreams and everything, and then you realize it's a dream. So it's not just like a kind of it's all a dream thing. It's sort of like set up similarly to like how Inception was, how like you knew it was a dream. Like it wasn't like a huge twist that it was a dream. It was interwoven in the plot. I don't know how this is gonna work. Might need to figure out a new ending, but that's basically the plot. I need to like, yeah. So Dawn arrives after 10 years. The lawyer says he tried to talk to Paula, but will just tell her on the phone. There's a will somewhere in the house. Paula says Dawn can sleep in her old room. The basement. But then, Dawn doesn't want to sit there because she was abused there. And that's sort of going to have the horror movie. There's going to be this sort of ghostly sort of mother thing that we find out is memory later. They find it in his old chair. He thought my mom hated the old chair, but they kept the old chair. And in the chair is this note that's like gonna be in Greek or in whatever we end up choosing, Latin or some old fucking language, some National Treasure kind of fucking clue. where they have to find like the video because he's gonna like bequeath everything to them in the video. But he wanted to hide it from his wife because she wanted to change it, and in order to change it, you need to use the video. So yeah, they have to like update their fucking computer. Okay. So then they have a memory of the axe of the dog, which I may or may not use. Okay. They solve the riddle. And then they have to email their answer to this like server that's gonna let them know if they answered correctly or not. So while they're waiting for the response, we're gonna do the dreaming ghost. Okay, yeah, I think that kind of works because they have the fight, and then it's set up 2 times that the mother was this evil ghost. Cool. So don't investigate these from the mother. Publish it really. They did this to both parents in different ways. We'll share the will. And then this ending, I don't really know what we're gonna do there. But yeah, roll credits. You know what I mean? Okay, cool. So we have a rough outline. That's great. Like that's that whole Jordan Peele thing. Like build the sandbox so you can play in it. So let's take a look through those. Order of events. We've ordered them. 7 steps are in there. We can sort of clarify them as we go, but like they're in there. Weakness and need, problem and desire. Those are clear. Opponents are clear. Plan's clear. Battle's clear. Beautiful. Okay, so that's gonna be that. I'm gonna take another little break, and then we're gonna come back for chapter 4. All right, cool. Nice start.